And so let's look at the EU AI Act. So the EU AI Act it's basically an act which is it's in place now. It's been actively enforced. And so what they're asking at the moment is for transparency and making sure you got documentation about what AI you're using. They're going to go down the point where they're going to start actually being a lot more rigorous about what they ask for. Currently, they have prohibitions on what you can do. So AI engines can't do any biometric real-time scanning unless they're a law-based. There's law exceptions for law-making firms. They can't do, so you can't do remote biometric identification in public spaces. You got to make sure you're handling your data properly. Excuse me, while I'm actually trying to read a guide very quickly on something. And then when you're using your models, you need to make sure you have transparency on how you use the models. You need to inform your users that you are using this model. So what we find where I currently work, I have and every document I produce, which is assisted with AI or written by AI, I put a disclaimer saying, this is the AI engine I used to write it. This is the version I used it. This is the date it's been produced. So you have a version box for the AI engine you used. You have a version box for your human in the loop edits as well made on there. So you keep it in sync and you inform the users when you're using AI to do generation. And you're also informing the user when you made edits and what changes you made. So be aware of the European AI Act and make sure that you are compliant if you need to trade within that organization. These acts will roll around other countries as well, and they'll start influencing how other governments. So understand it, start applying it, start using it. And so let's get on to AI governance. So if you want your project to be successful, the executive has to have skin in the game. They have to be ownership of the AI. They have to be driving the AI. When you're doing an AI project, if the executives aren't backing it and they aren't sort of setting the direction of where they want to go, it can be a vague direction, but it means you need some way of saying, we want to aim for these types of things. We're looking for let's say we're looking for a process improvement of 20% on how we do production or how we process our data. Or we want to say, they will set a set of guidelines for what they're aiming to go. The AI team that works, the Center of Excellence, will take those high-level requirements and work out where we can have impact, where we can actually build out a system that can actually enable us to be good. They'll understand what is available. They'll do a lot of research, a lot of trial and errors to work out what cannot be done, what the right guidelines in place. As we get into a later slide, I'll take you through some of those aspects of that. And then your operational team, once the Center of Excellence has decided, say, right, we're going to build out this particular use case, they scope out what they need, they pass it to an operational team who will actually do the development, prove it, they'll have the metrics they want to measure about. It's a very iterative process. Sometimes you have to go back up to the steering committee and say, that initiative, we cannot do that because we need to change this side of the business. Those changes are good to consider, but again, it causes a bigger impact because if you're changing process, you're changing organizational structure, you're changing reporting lines, you're changing the way reports work, or you're changing what type of reports you need, it has impact across the whole business. So when I get to the use case slide, I'll talk more about how you choose the right project. The big thing about making sure your governance works is if there is a question, know who has to answer that question. Where is the escalated to? Who is the person who is responsible? Who is the person who's accountable for that decision? Document your decisions as well. So who can make the decision and what decisions they made and why they made the decision. So if you look at architecture decision records, use something like that format to log the decisions of the steering committee and the other teams. It can be done simply. It doesn't have to be arduous and bureaucratic overhead, but it gives you a chance to roll back changes, work out what's going to be a type 1 or a type 2 change, which changes are going to change the company with no reverse, and which ones are going to change the company that we can reverse out of. You also want to make sure that you're reporting on what the AI is doing, and you want to do that daily basis. The reason for doing daily is you can see kicks up in the way things work, if you're not aware of how your agents are working, if you're not aware on how close your agents are hitting the point of actually matching what's been asked, if they're deviating from what you're asking for and you need to change your prompts, the reporting is going to capture some of that stuff, and it's going to give you good evidence to see what roughly changed it. Was it a version release the agent was updated by the vendor, or is it something in the prompt changed and therefore the AI is now interpreting it differently? One of the best cases I've heard for agent drift is when you're working on film. I was at the Vancouver AI Film Festival, which was last month. Absolutely amazing event to attend. And the artists and the film producers there, they were talking about issues with AI agents, that they'll be generating 250 plus slides or frames for a movie sequence, and it's all of this lovely fox. And then the 251st slide, the AI decides to render it as a cat rather than a fox, because something in the way the volumetrics of that particular slide to the next slide changed, that the AI now thought, oh, it's not a fox anymore, it's a cat. So it decided to draw a cat instead. And so you get these weird things where AI can flip its mode, and understanding why it flipped the mode is very useful to have. If you don't report, but you don't have metrics, you're not going to be able to capture those flips easily and just understand where the flip happened. Because you actually find, if you go back into the previous slides, you can see where it started bleeding over to being a cat. It's sort of those 3 or 4 slides where it started looking more cat-like than fox-like, and then it flipped when large scale happened. And then the other thing is make sure you got budget. You can't do AI as a side of the desk project. If you don't do it, you'll find your employees will probably start doing AI projects to simplify their work. They'll use engines, they'll use whatever they have to actually make their work out, because AI does help you do your job from day to day. And it is very effective at doing research, gathering data, validating facts. It does need a human in the loop to validate what it said, but it gives you a very good breakdown of where it's going. So if you have a set of prompts, you can get some very good information out of agents, and people will use it because it makes your job easier. So sanction your AI projects, make sure there is escalation paths. So if someone wants to do an AI project, put them in touch with the Center of Excellence, take that use case and work out, is that a sensible use case to build out? And is that a good use case to use for the company to have? And then put budget aside or put time aside. Another client I'm working for, we've just started an AI coding practice, and we're trying to roll out a series of apps using AI. We're using a BA to do the coding, the vibe coding side of it, and we've got various controls in place. We put good budget aside. We have fairly aggressive timelines. So far, the results are looking very interesting, and it's actually saving us time in a lot of ways, and so it has potential to change the way that organization is doing some of its development work in the future. And so AI will have an impact if you give it a place to have and you give it controls. So governance, vital. Setting strategy is vital. Setting objective and strategic direction is vital. And then monitoring and making sure you're matching those strategies, but also be prepared to change your strategy with AI. AI changes. If AGI comes out in the next month, which may, judging by who you talk to, some people think it is, this will all change, because AGI will be able to do a lot more of this without us being even in the loop. So it's going to be fascinating when those changes start happening. I still think AGI is a good few years out.
I mean, it can be
Yep.
fascinating, but it can be horrible as well. I mean, if not governed properly, I guess. But I would like to understand type 1 and type 2. You mentioned type 1 and type 2 decisions, something around that. So if you could please talk
You're
about it a
asking,
bit.
okay. I always get type 1, type 2 confused in my head. Type 1 are decisions where you walk through the door locks behind you, so you cannot get back into the room you've just left. Type 2 decisions are you can walk through the door and then you can come back through the door. It doesn't lock behind you. So basically, a type 1 decision is something that's it changes your
Okay.
organization and you can't roll back. Type 2, you can roll back.
All right.
And so type 2 discs are low risk. It's arduous sometimes the rollback, but it means you can actually reverse the decision.
Hmm.
And
And
if I'm wrong, correct me in the chat, but I'll have to go check it up when I get out. But I always get type 1, type 2 confused that way. So,
sure, sure. No, I was actually thinking that maybe there's a type one, type two in terms of decision matrix in the context of AI or something, but like this is
no.
this type one, type two, yeah. I understand what you mean. But the other question would be that do we have any diagnostic tools to audit data accesses for different AI agents? Like I'm sure for governance and for making sure that uh, the problems that you mentioned are not there. It's important to actually do audits and all that. So we have something in chat, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Sasha, she knows I have this problem with type 1, type 2. We had a long chat about this last week. So, one thing about the AI monitoring and governance and actually knowing what's been accessed under your standard controls. If you're doing full BI and you're doing a business intelligence or a data architecture, you should know who is accessing what data. You should know who has permission to access your data. You should know what systems are accessing your data. If you have good identity access management or good identity controls in your organization, you again should know who's accessing. An agent is just a user in the system that has access control. So if you have your access tracking and your user monitoring, give your agent a user account and you can track it that way. The only issue is when you get into things like MCPs, they're more black boxy. So it's harder to track what that's doing and how it's working. Because an MCP is basically give me a result, it goes away, chuns off, calls its own agentic systems, does all manner of things, returns an answer. You don't necessarily know what the MCP did. And then also the security controls on MCPs are, when they built the standard out, it was built for under the same sort of things as HTTP. It's like get it out there, get it working, we'll worry about security later. It hit the market so hard, so fast, proved so useful that it got rolled out to all these companies. And then people started going, well, what about security? What about this? How do I do observability in it? And so they are trying to roll in these standards to make it more observable, more standard. So if you look at Anthropic's discussion on MCP, there's a very active chats about how we secure it, how we make sure it's stable, reliable, and secure, and not damaging to your organization. Because an MCP can do all manner of things. Anybody can fire up an MCP server. Anybody can create one. I've wrapped a few of my things with MCPs because I don't want to expose the underlying orchestration to another system in my house. And the MCP does work, and it really is blind. My agent that calls it is blind to what the MCP does. And it has permissions to alter things as well. So it has potential to go rogue in some ways. But it's like any employee, like any human, you want to make sure you have monitoring in place so you know where your threat actors are. An agent is a threat actor. So consider it as a valid threat actor. But if you have good controls, it shouldn't be a problem.